Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so many depth psychologists and mythologists believe that there is one essential task for each soul, so that it would be possible to live your entire life and do everything just right, but neglect that one task, and the deeper meaning of your life would go unfulfilled. On the other hand, it's possible to disappoint others, not be understood by others, to betray certain collective norms and cherished values, and yet still complete your task and feel fulfilled at the moment of death. This same philosophy is very beautifully depicted in the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, in the quote that reads, "If you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you." My name is Anna Mozol, and I'm here to talk with you today about the destiny line of the soul. Those moments in life and dreams that create a push-pull between the part of you that wants things to stay exactly as they are and the part that wants to break through into new experience and new ground. I'm introverted by nature, so I tend to shy away from public speaking events. But when I was asked to speak at the Dream Salon today, and I heard what the date would be, I knew I had to say yes. I lost two of my mentors last year, two women who I admired greatly and who made significant imprints on my life. Women that I studied under, women who provided me with a strong enough foundation to risk speaking out and stepping further along my own destiny line. Those women are Marion Woodman and Gina Ogden. Gina Ogden actually died 1 year ago today, on the very day. And today is also Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead in Mexico and South America. It's also All Souls Day in the Christian tradition. The last time I spoke with Gina, she said to me that this was her year of completion, and that it really is okay. I'm ready to pass over into spirit, and I have wonderful guides on all planes. May we all be so blessed to feel this way when our own time comes. I think of depth psychology and dream work as having three essential phases. So the first phase is the jumping off point. And I've made art pieces, these are all art pieces that I've done that depict these three stages. The myth of Inanna begins with the words, "She turned her ear towards the great below." And I think this beautifully depicts this moment. This is also typically the "oh shit" moment. This is not what I was expecting when I signed up to do dream work. Because the process of working with dreams is a process of going down. It's going into confusing territory. It's going into the shadows. It's going into the nebulous. It's going into confusion and sometimes disintegration for periods of time. This is depicted well by the archetypal psychologist James Hillman, who calls this landscape the feminine soul, and says it's in direct opposition to the masculine spirit, which is kind of our everyday consciousness mode of being, which is always seeking ascension, always looking for the next goal, always attempting to seek understanding, clarity, and precision. So, the depth psychological movement of Dreamwork is a movement down, which flows very nicely into the second phase, which is facing the demons of the past. Ties in a little bit with Leslie's conversation and talk on nightmares. So, these are the traumatic moments and memories of our lives that we all have to various degrees. And paradoxically, it's the desire to flee, minimize, or deny these difficult moments in the past that actually bind individuals to repeating them endlessly in various disguised forms. So, facing these demons and these traumas of the past is essential to do through the lens of the present day in order to gain enough energy and momentum to break the enormous power of repetition compulsion that's at the heart of traumatic memories. So the third phase is approaching destiny. I think my cards are in the wrong order. But that's okay. Sure. So I think of destiny as the true path of the individual soul. It's kind of like the individual blueprint, but this is usually obscured with familial and cultural expectations and experiences. The concept of destiny comes from Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung's theory of dream work, where he says that dreams actually hold a teleological function. And that means that there's a pull in the dream itself that is always inviting and guiding the individual towards the future and the life that they're meant to live. Destiny dreams can come through at any point in the process, but I find they most come through after these first two phases have been worked for quite some time. When I was in graduate school, I attended a conference in depth psychology. And when Marion Woodman took the stage, something came alive in me. Something came alive in my viscera. I don't remember what she said, I don't remember the words, but I will never forget the feelings. It was as if the words she spoke came from deep in the earth itself, and were speaking directly somehow to my body-soul, creating these waves of visceral sensations through me. I wondered if I was alone in this experience, so I looked around to see if anyone else was being a little weird or odd or surprised. And everyone seemed really normal, just writing notes, paying attention, doing their regular thing. That night, I woke from one of the strongest dreams I've ever had in my life. And in it, I was in an old, rustic kind of forest area in this cabin, in a kitchen, and it was just Marion and me. There was this very long oak table, and she stood at one end of it, and I stood at the other. And I remember even thinking in the dream, oh my God, it's kind of fascinating that Marion's in my dream tonight. Just after seeing her today at the conference. I wonder what this could mean, you know? And we were like this. We were almost like staring each other down like two sumo wrestlers or something like that across this long table. And just when I was wondering, what the heck is going on here? Her dream body leapt across the table disappeared, and then she grabbed both of my wrists in this ironclad grip. She stared into my eyes and she said, "Why are you denying your destiny?" And I went, It was like an alternate universe had opened up. There was like this vortex of energy that was created swirling in my bedroom. And you wake from a dream like that, you don't ever forget it. I've never forgotten that dream, and I've certainly never forgotten the feeling. So Marion says that nobody walks towards their destiny line consciously, but rather they're dragged, kicking and screaming and complaining and bargaining, right? And that has been my experience. In fact, between the dream that I had and the eventual letter that I sent to Marion, I had several dreams that depicted and showed me quite clearly my own reluctance to step onto my path. I will share 2 of these dreams with you. In the first dream, I'm in an underground tunnel, and I'm with my grandmother and my aunt and myself. So we're 3 generations of women, which seems quite significant to begin with. And we come up from this underground tunnel in India where we've been traveling, and there's a priestess there. And she's doing old readings, destiny readings. And she does them with this technique, I don't know if you're familiar with it, of throwing the bones. So she throws the bones and then reads the design of them to tell each of our futures. So she does the reading for my grandmother, then she does the reading for my Aunt Holly, and then when it comes to my turn, I say, I'm not at all sure I want this reading. And I say, well, maybe. Could I get a discount? Like maybe if you could give me 50% off, I'd consider it. So, in the 30-some years of working with dreams that I've been doing, one thing I can say with utter certainty, maybe one of the only things I can say with utter certainty, is that when it comes to destiny, there is no discount. As much as we might want there to be a discount. Although I do understand the part of me that asked for one. It's the part that says, why the hell do I have to do all of this work? Why didn't my mother do some of the work? Why didn't my father do any of his work? What about the previous generations? This seems to be falling on me specifically. And I think that's one of the difficult truths about the destiny line is you often have to work through the unworked complexes of the previous generation before you can even find the entranceway to your own path. But there's also a more compassionate way of looking at it. I've come to feel over the years that each generation does do their own part. And I do know that it's true that there are opportunities here for me that did not exist for my mother, did not exist for my grandmother. And that maybe in a very real way they did fulfill their own destiny, which brought me to the threshold of mine. Marie-Louise von Franz, in her book on dreams and death, talks of a man she was in depth analysis with. And he was complaining to her about all of the work, all of the years, all of the analysis, all of the money he spent to become conscious. And now he was dying. And he was in midlife. He's like, maybe I should have done something else. And that night, he had a dream. And there was a voice that came to him in that dream. And that voice said, do you know the work that you have done to become conscious for these countless generations, both forward and backward? And that still gives me shivers every time I hear it. And I think it's such a beautiful notion. And it's a good plug for Dreamwork. It's community-oriented. It has reverberations. It goes far and wide into places that you might never see in your own lifetime. So in my dream, the priestess did not hide her disgust at my asking for a discount. And her response was to light something on fire and place it under my chair. I could actually feel the fire moving up through my chakras. And then she locked eyes with me and she said, you must create or die. So very clear message from the unconscious coming through. And I do believe I understand what she meant. She meant if I did not create, a part of me would die through never living. And that's the other interesting thing about the destiny line. According to some depth psychologists, if you do not do your task, there is nobody else for your task. There is just you. If you don't do it, it goes undone. So then I have another dream. In this dream, I'm in a ritual circle, community. And again, there's this high priestess, this powerful feminine figure at the center. And I find out at some point along the way that the ritual is being done to decide who amongst us will die. And when I find this out, I get a shiver up my spine, and I'm like, all of a sudden, I no longer wish to participate in this ritual. I'm confronted directly when it becomes my turn. And surprising even to me, I say, I already know that I was chosen to die, and I refuse the call. Feeling quite strong, feeling quite good about myself in that moment, feeling like I was definitely making the right decision. And she locks eyes with mine, and she says, do you have anything to wear to your funeral? It's funny, but it wasn't funny at the time. I have to be honest. I have a shaman friend that said to me once, we all have 4 doors to the other side. And in this moment, I really thought I had approached one of my doors. In fact, my mind started spinning of all of the ways that I could die within the next few days. Because the psyche doesn't know the difference between psychological death and physical death. So entering into the dreams and stepping onto the destiny line, and why so few people do it, is because it does require a death. It requires a death of the identity, the false identity, that you or we or myself in this dream, I believed that I was. And in that way, it's an initiation. Initiation always has a death at its core. It's always a brush with death. And the Romanian religious scholar Mircea Eliade defines initiation, and I love this definition. Initiation is the beginning of the revelation of one's true self. And Carl Jung defined the individuation journey, the movement, the inner psychic movement towards wholeness, as a series of initiations that had to be survived. So back to Inanna, Sumerian goddess of love, beauty, desire, sex, justice, and war. She covers a lot of ground. Inanna was stripped piece by piece of all appearances and all pretenses until she stood naked before her dark sister, Ereshkigal, in the underworld. At each level, and you could think of these stages as these levels of each level of initiation, her jewelry had to be sacrificed. Her title, her crown, her relationships, her clothing, until nothing remained but the truth. Initiation kind of feels like this, disintegrating, often humiliating, until one is settled on the other side. Then there can be gratitude. Then there can be understanding. So I have another image that I painted that represents this meeting of the sisters. Nearly 4 years after my "Why Are You Denying Your Destiny" dream, when I was beginning my doctoral dissertation, I wrote a letter to Marion Woodman asking her if she would be a member on my committee, and I really didn't feel like it was much of a possibility. I knew how insanely busy she was with her own writing, research, and these body-soul rhythms that were almost impossible to get into and that she was doing all over the world. But the seeds of that dream stayed with me and guided me to try, even when my complexes left me feeling unworthy. The moment that I found out that she agreed to be a member on my committee. I was traveling home and I was visiting family, and I called back from my voicemail, and I heard her voice, and it was like the earth dissolved from under me again, just with hearing her voice on the voicemail. And those shivers started again, and it was kind of like, what is this? You know? What is this? It also created a chasm between myself and my family. It was like being at the threshold of my own destiny changed the way that I experienced the present. I felt utterly detached from the regular projective hooks and distorted images that were allowed within my family system. So, I dug deep, obviously. I'm working harder than I would if anyone else was on my committee, probably. I worked hard. I wrapped up the complete 320-page manuscript in a plain brown paper with the title carefully written in a black felt Sharpie, and I tied a very simple oatmeal string around it, and I mailed it off to Marion, my sole essence in writing and research. And I couldn't wait for her first words. We set a time to talk after she'd had a chance to read it and review it. And I'm not sure if I already mentioned this, but I had worked within a sealed alchemical vessel, so the entire time, all of the writing, all of the work, I had not shared a word of it with anyone. There are numerous problems grammatically with your writing. And at your age, I don't think you'll ever make the necessary adjustments. So much died in me in that moment that I, again, could hardly hear anything else she said. In fact, all this static started to develop on the phone line, and we could actually seriously only hear each other's every second or third word. We had to end our conversation. I was on a silent retreat at the time, if you can believe it. So I was in the middle of my silent retreat, so I had taken up, set this, and I was just gonna go into this glorious second half of my retreat. And I was left with such disturbance. So our complex connection continued. Subsequent phone calls, subsequent meetings, I'd get on the phone, I'd hear her voice, and I would become 12 years old. I would swear that this would not happen the next time. I am an adult. I can handle this situation. There's some kind of, I would figure out the projections. I would meditate on the projections. I would figure out what was going on. I'd get clear on what I wanted to say. I'd have the points in front of me. I'd meditate. I'd have a crystal in my hand. I'd get on the phone, and that slow descent through the years would start again. Yet, something was happening. Something was changing in me. And I continued to dream deeply with Marion. In one dream, we met tens of thousands of miles below the earth, and she brought me to her own sacred temenos, these wild walls that were something like hay and had crystals woven in them. And above us, way above, there was a carnival that was taking place. And there, she shared with me many of the secrets that she found in her own lifetime of studying dreams. It was like our personal neuroses and shadows and complexes kept colliding on the surface, while below our souls met in the underworld, and our destiny lines intertwined. So I'm sure it's probably obvious by now, but I had a very complicated projection onto Marion. She was something like a cross between the living representative of the divine feminine and the archetypal mother. And basically, I wanted her to be my mom, with a bit of an archetypal edge. And near the end of my research, she wrote a letter to my committee chair holding up the work, asking for several revisions and several changes to be done and implemented. These were not just changes to me. These were things that went against my deepest values. Not all of them. Some of them were simple enough, but a few of them went against my own lived experience and my own felt sense. I had a dream. I am pregnant It's a glorious feeling. Somehow my mother's there, and she'll take care of the child when it's born. This seems fine until I reflect on it further. And then I'm quite uncomfortable with the situation. And I have the thought for the first time that just maybe I'll be strong enough to take care of the child when it's born. I can take it with me when I move. So obviously, on one level, the child here is the dissertation itself. And the possibility of it being taken by the mother or given to the mother was that I would give over my own power because of my own mother complex. Because it was too hard to hold, and because it was too much of a challenge to step up to. I was honestly in silent anguish about this because I had to either go against a woman that I most admired and risk attaining my PhD, something I'd worked 4 years towards, or comply with her wishes and go against my truth. So I held the tension of the opposites as long as I possibly could until finally a third came through. This is the Jungian, the transcendent function. You hold the tension of the opposites in this impossible place, and at some point a third will come through. And that was, I'll write a separate chapter. And in that chapter, I'll outline everything that Marian has asked for. I'll speak to the complicated crossroads we find ourselves at, and then I'll respectfully oppose and bring in my position to each of her points. I did that, and I brought in the dreams that supported that decision. And luckily, she was satisfied, and I was able to successfully defend my dissertation. Even though she invited me to, I did not contact her for many years after this. I was very hurt by what had happened, and I felt much of it had been unnecessary. So, it might have been 4 years, 3-4 years later, I decided to phone her. I got very centered. I did all my practice. I got all my notes down. But I was ready to leave a voicemail. I was ready to leave a message on her machine. The first ring, she picks up, "Hello?" And I shared with her what I was going to say on the answering machine. And she said, "Oh, dear, you've been holding this all this time on your own?" And it was very sweet, and it was very genuine, and it brought tears to my eyes because I had been holding a lot on my own. But I was older, I held my own, and we discussed things in greater depth around what had happened. Marian is no longer with us, and it feels like a lifetime since I had that initial dream. I recently learned that the last book that she was working on before her health deteriorated was on the same topic as my dissertation. And it was to be the culmination of her life's work. It was on the demon lover complex as the core complex that possesses the feminine within a patriarchal society. That work was never completed. But her work lives on in me. And it lives on in the lives of the countless individuals she touched with her rare, unique, strong, beautiful, complicated soul. And the beauty of our connection lives on in me, as well as a desire to continue the work that she started around conscious femininity. I'm very committed to that work. And a revisioning of Love, Dark Feminine Rising. I have the cover of it, but not necessarily the book cover, just the image cover, is my contribution to this body of work. While following my destiny line did not bring me what I expected or what I wanted, it was not fun, and it was certainly not easy, but it brought me what I needed, which was an initiation by fire that forever changed me and woke me from a deep sleep. It is my sincere hope that if you take anything from this talk, it's that when you have such a powerful dream, that you take it seriously and you listen deeply and act on it, even if it scares you, even if it feels impossible at the time. Marion says that the call of destiny costs no less than everything. But in my estimation, it's worth it. It's the only chance of living your own life. It's the only chance of real freedom. Thank you.